Welcome to Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, where we discuss how to break into the performing arts industry for yourself or your child, teen, or young adult. Guests include artists, creatives, casting directors, musical directors, choreographers, agents and managers, as well as parents of young professional actors, singer, dancers, all who are passionate and share my vision of helping talented individuals land professional representation and have successful careers in the arts. My name is Leesa Csolak, and I am the CEO and founder of Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, having helped hundreds of clients break into the business on stage, in films, television, commercial work, and more. This podcast is supplemental to my groundbreaking online courses, Professional Kids and Teens 101, a primer for parents, and Professional Biz 201 for young adults, college students, and graduates. For more information, check out all the ways you can benefit from my courses, programs, free weekly newsletters, and free guides. Go to lbctalent.com. My guest today is Casey Garvin. Hi, Casey. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so great. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to talk to you today. You are going to be opening a brand new Broadway show. It's coming really fast. So tell us what's been up lately in the last few days for you.
Yeah, so I'm currently rehearsing Some Like It Hot on Broadway, which is an awesome new musical. Very, very old school Broadway feel in the best way, but kind of updated to still hold up in today's climate and for today's audience. And it's just so amazing. I love the show. I can't wait to show people what we've been working on. We just finished our 4-week rehearsal process, and we have completed this week our first week of the tech process.
And that's when you're in the theater, correct?
Yes, we're in the theater, we're in costumes, we have all of the elements of the set moving, on and off stage. We've got lighting, we've got sound, there's everyone's department now is doing lots of stuff. It's not just a director and a music team and the actors in a room. It's stage managers, it's costume designers, it's sound designers, it's lighting designers. It takes truly a village to put up any show, but especially a massive Broadway show like we're doing.
And what role do you play in this particular show?
I'm in the ensemble, and I play a bit of a featured role, a gangster named Mac. It's very 1930s Italian mobster type.
Okay, I love it.
So I play Mac, the gangster, who's kind of like the kind of big dumb guy, which is fun to play. Not too much. We don't sit too much into the tropes of like old school Hollywood movies, but the idea of like kind of the big dumb gangster is still really silly to me and really fun. Yeah, so I do that, and I cover Spats Colombo, who is the head mobster, who I'm his kind of henchman, and I understudy Christian Borle, who plays Joe, who's kind of one of the leads of the show, which is wild.
Iconic, legendary actor, singer, dancer of Broadway. That is very exciting.
Yes, it's wild. I feel very grateful to be where I'm at now with my career, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, we're going to get into all of the shows that you've been in because there's been so many of them. But I want to go back, right? I want to go back to the beginning because there's a lot of listeners who are parents of young, talented children and teens, and some of them are in a place where they're wondering whether or not it's the time to get them involved in the professional side or if they should just train them. And so being enlightened by someone like yourself who started as a child actor is helpful or would be helpful to them. And so that they can kind of learn from your journey and where that came from. Because being a child actor and then being able to also stay with it and be an adult actor is very unusual and very difficult and doesn't always happen. So this is, I'm excited to talk to you about that. So where did it start? When did you start? When did you find that you had an affinity for this?
Sure. I think it almost feels like I fell into it as I think back on my memories, because I was always kind of an outgoing child. I was always loved performing. I loved putting on my mom's clothes and playing dress up, and I played every character in The Wizard of Oz in rotation when I was 4 or 5 years old. I loved being the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion and Dorothy at times, or Toto at times. It's just
I love that.
so fun. I just loved everything about singing and dancing and performing before I even knew what that really was. And I think my parents took me to see Broadway shows. You know, we grew up in New Jersey, so I was always aware of what theater was. I always would sit there and feel, you know, the tingles as the overture started for Broadway shows, which still happens.
Same,
Um,
same with me. I'm the same
yeah.
way.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best feeling in the world. And so I think my parents recognize that, which I think is probably the most important thing for a parent with a child who maybe they think, should I put my child in theater? Is like, if they get to a theater and that happens to them, like put them in immediately, you know, any acting class, any dance class, just because you recognize like, oh, they are connecting to the point, the whole, you know, the performance, the music, and the healing, lovely part of all of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so then my mom took me to a manager because someone recommended that I do commercials because I was outgoing as a kid, and that played out
Okay.
successfully,
Yes.
which I recognize how, I guess, fortunate I was. I had no idea in the matter. I wasn't training, you know, I
Yeah,
wasn't,
that was the next
yeah.
question, actually. Were you in any training at that age? And how old were you? Do you remember when you first got signed?
I think I was 6 or 7. I think I
Oh,
was
you
pretty
were really
young.
young.
Yeah, I think, and I had gone in for commercials, but I read the little script that they gave me, and I just imagined like I used to read in school or have the teachers read to me in school, and they were so expressive with their
Yeah.
words. And I remember
Yeah.
thinking, okay, I'll just read it like my teacher reads it and be really expressive with my words. And I followed the directions that the managers told me to do. You
Sure.
know, be really expressive, be really outgoing, be really, you know, excited to be reading
That
me.
is so young because honestly, and this day and age now, usually a child who is like 8 and under, they don't really sign them. They'll say, well, we'll
Mm,
send you out and see what happens because they're so young and there's all those changes that are going to happen as they start to age.
sure.
So you were successful right away. Do you remember your first audition or your first booking, or is it just a blur? Because you were very young.
I I might have been a little older. I might have been 8. I might have been 9. I truly can't remember. I remember enjoying it as a young kid. But yeah, maybe I had auditioned at maybe 7 or 8. Anyway, I do remember going into the city for auditions.
Okay.
And the first thing that I booked was a Chuck E. Cheese commercial.
Okay.
And I had so much fun doing that. I just remember thinking like, wow, people are putting clothes on me that I don't own, and I get to eat the pizza on you know, there's a camera in front of me, and all I have to do is okay, action, and I just had to eat pizza really quickly. And they told me to spit
Yes.
it into a bucket, and I didn't spit it into a bucket because I was like, why would I waste the pizza? Um, and I remember that, and for a few years, I think it was fairly successful. I did a couple commercials, a couple not industrials, but like print industrials, I guess, where they film a portion of it, and then they end up taking pictures from that,
Hmm.
and putting them on an ad for
Hmm.
like Nasacort nasal spray.
Hmm.
And I did a Toys R Us catalog, and it wasn't, I don't think, incredibly serious at the time. It wasn't, you know, or rather, it was serious and it was professional, but it wasn't like I was booking TV shows or I wasn't booking
Sure.
Broadway musicals. But I was going in, you know. I definitely remember auditioning with Nick Jonas for Les Mis, and you know,
Really?
I remember going in at that point. I definitely didn't make it past the initial audition. I wasn't
Uh-huh.
very good actually
Okay.
until later on in life, but
Okay.
okay, yeah, my mom was like, "Oh, we remember hearing about those kids, and we saw them in a church production when they were young, and through mutual friends." And
Mhm.
apparently, I was auditioning with Nick Jonas, and he got it,
That's
so good for him. But
that's hysterical. So you remember the fun. It sounds like it was fun. I mean, you're laughing and smiling and it was all fun. Did it feel a little bit more like an extracurricular activity to you? Did you know that this was a big deal? Did you realize you were living in the adult world in those moments?
you know, I don't think I did. I think I saw it as an extracurricular, but in the sense that it was something that I really enjoyed. I think that
Okay.
and I had started dance classes, I think maybe around the same time, if not a year later,
Okay.
because it was acting. And then, you know, Shirley Grant, who was my manager, I, I think she's passed actually
Yes,
since.
yes.
Yeah, may she rest in peace. But she, you know, signed me and seemed to enjoy me. But she said, you know, if he wants to go in for the musicals, because it seems like he wants to do that, he needs to sing, he needs to take dance class. So after they signed me, or rather, if they hadn't signed me, as soon as they started sending me out on things to see how it goes, um, then they said, take those classes, and I did, and I enjoyed dance the most, I think, because it was something I did every day after school. So
Okay.
that was extracurricular, and that was the where the training really started. And
Okay.
then I took an acting class or two as a kid, and I had a voice teacher. Her name was Bernice Elkin. I think a, she was a pretty famous voice teacher. She taught the Annies, I believe, on the original production of Annie.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and she was Shirley Grant's cousin, I think. But she
Okay.
was. I remember going to her house once a week, and singing and just enjoying that. It became more challenging and more harder. It was hard work, and I don't think
Yes.
once I realized that it was going to take work to do it,
Yes.
I was a little less inclined. It wasn't just putting on costumes. It wasn't just eating pizza in front of a camera. It's
Right.
hard. It's what we
Right.
do is hard, and you need to train. There's
Yes.
only so far that natural talent, which can get you very far and
Hmm.
is great to have. You need a balance of natural instincts and
Yes.
train.
Yes, yes. And you know what? Let's talk about that for just 1 second. I think the training is so important, and I try to drive home all the time to my clients and to people who are taking my courses now to say
Mm,
the training needs to be something that's always happening. Like I
yeah,
feel like there's a lot of parents out there, and maybe it's driven by the kids because we're in a different, time now with the phones and the information
yeah,
highway and all the things that they have access to with the computer, but they tend to just want to do shows and they don't want to train because, of
yeah,
course, exactly what you're saying, when you're a kid, it's fun to be in the shows, but on the other side of it, you do need to keep the training going, because when you are in a show as a kid, as a teen in high school, it's hard because you're just, your time is so consumed by being in the performance and being a part of that, and
right.
certainly it's fun, and then you have the social aspect of it ties in as well. But when you're not in a show, you need to be training because someone
Yeah,
else is.
yeah,
So, someone else that is your peer is training, and that's true whether it's at a high school level or at a professional level. But most definitely,
correct.
I think the parents are driven by what the kids want to do many times, and so
Mm,
at least nowadays, and so they don't want to continue that training, so it,
right.
it makes it tricky. And exactly what you said, it's work now. It's
Yeah,
not just putting on costumes. I think that's such a really good point to drive
yeah,
home, that you have to go, okay,
totally.
how bad do I want this? So how bad did you want it?
I think there was a point there then after maybe like 10-ish until maybe 14 where then it was kind of like, do I want this? And then you deal with bullying a little bit, especially as a
Hmm.
young boy.
Hmm.
Um, you deal with bullying and you deal with maybe not being as good as you were when you started, or
Hmm.
transitioning. You go through
Yes.
lots of transitions
Yes.
between 6 years old and 16 years old, and then again
Yes.
at 16 to 26, and
Well,
that's life.
yeah.
You're constantly changing.
Absolutely.
Um,
The body type's changing for males, the voice is changing,
yeah,
for women as well, that happens, but obviously not as intently as what happens with a male voice. But you're dealing with all of that. So it becomes really, at some point, you have to make a choice. What do I want to do? So, okay, let's go back. So you were training in dance, you started
yeah,
taking voice, and you were doing some acting classes. So did you
yes.
continue to audition during that time, or did you take a
I
break?
did. I
Okay.
did. I never really took a break from auditioning. And sometimes I would have more auditions and less. Sometimes I would care about them more, and other times, sometimes it did feel like work. And luckily, my mom was very supportive and was just as driven as I was in the times when I wanted to do it. And when I didn't want to do it, she would say, "Get in the car. You have an audition." And she did push. I think the balance was great. It wasn't, if I at the times when I said I didn't want to do it, it was, do you actually not want to do it, or are you just kind of being lazy right now? Which I think we should listen to kids and listen and hear them, really hear them as to why they're saying they do or don't want to do something. But at the same time, it's easy to want to sit home and not do much, and I gained a little bit of weight as a 10, 11-year old, 12-year-old kid, and didn't like being very active. And I liked going to dance sometimes, but really dance class, I started not enjoying either. I
Mm.
didn't enjoy really any of it, and I wanted to quit, and had goals that I had set. Like I wanted to be the prince in our production of the Nutcracker, and
Mhm.
then was passed over for that, and was kind of like, well, what am I doing? I think I want to ride bikes with my friends.
Yes, yes.
And then that was in about seventh grade, middle
Sure.
school, when things
Yeah.
are pretty challenging. I
Yes.
went through a lot of bullying and a lot of ridicule for being a boy dancer,
Hmm.
and there was still something about it, which was the performing, that I still really loved. And even though I wasn't very good, and even though I didn't like working hard, I still loved performing. So that, I think, was what kept me going, and what my
Okay.
mom and dad saw as the continuing driving force to support me and to
Okay.
say, we're going to drive you into these auditions. We're going to keep paying for dance classes. We're
Hmm.
going to pick you up from school. And even if you're tired and don't really want to go, we're still going to drop you off at dance.
Yes. Yeah.
And my dance teacher was a good a healthy fear of her. When she came into the room and told you to get into class, you got into class.
Okay. Okay.
And she ran a tight ship.
Hmm.
And I'm appreciative of that,
Hmm.
because then a time came where a spark, I got a bit of a spark, or things clicked. And I remember at nationals that summer, going from seventh into eighth grade, I grew a few inches. I cut my hair off. And on stage, I had a solo where I was supposed to do two pirouettes and just land in the middle of the girls and kind of nod my head. And I hit something on the stage, and I did like five pirouettes and held the passe at the end, and was like, whoa, what did I just do? And everyone screamed in the audience, like
What?
all my whole team. And I thought, I want to be able to do that every time.
Oh, you're giving me chills.
And
That's amazing. This is like such a
thank
moment.
you. And it's a little bit of luck, the luck was there. But I also think at that point, I kind of was like, maybe I do like doing this. And
Hmm.
so the next year, all of eighth grade was still a little bit of, nah, maybe, maybe not. But I think I was trying harder. And
Hmm.
in trying harder, I started seeing results. And from those results, I started being like, well, if I want to be good at performing because I like performing, maybe I have to put in the work to do it. And so I think the point of all of that middle school era of wanting to take little breaks, is like supporting your child and supporting yourself as a child, to letting it, wane a little bit, letting the energy perhaps take that back seat for a second, to really figure out if it's something you want to do. Because then when you take that rest and when you take that moment, then you might see, well, there is something I still love. And so really tuning into, what is it about it then that you're still enjoying? If it's the performing, then take a second and then get back in the room and work harder. Because if you
Hmm.
want to perform and you love performing, you're going to have to work to get good at
Yes.
it.
That is such
and
great
then
advice.
and then my freshman year of high school, I really was all in, and I
Okay.
took two ballet classes every day, and started figuring out how I could get better, how I could
Mhm.
see the guys who were dancing on Broadway at the time, which right before my high school big transition into really auditioning, and or auditioning as an adult, even at
Mhm.
15, 16,
Mhm. Sure.
was like West Side Story was coming in, that revival in 2009.
Yes, I
And so I
remember.
saw a bunch of guys dancing on stage, and I was like, if I see them, how did they dance? How do I get to
Hmm.
be good like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you identify? I always ask new clients that I work with whether they identify as a dancer first and then a singer and then an actor, or an actor, singer, dancer. Do they identify as a singer? And if they identify specifically as a dancer, what genre of dancer do they identify first as? So how do you identify now?
Now it's tricky, because I also want to start playing roles, and I'm ready for that,
Like
and I feel like
leads,
I've put the work in
leads?
lead
Yeah.
roles. Yeah, even if
Yeah.
it's a dance heavy show. But I think now there are so many incredible dancers on Broadway that I don't know if I would consider myself a dancer first anymore. I think I am a performer first. I know
I
that's
love
kind of
that.
the that's kind of
Yes.
the scapegoat of
No,
getting
no,
out of the
no.
question.
It's
But
a perfect
yeah,
segue from what you were just saying, because what did you love the most? You loved the performing,
performing,
the
yeah. And
storytelling.
yes, the story. I'm a storyteller in whatever capacity that
Right.
is. Sometimes it's as an actor and taking text
Hmm.
and interpreting text and delivering that text in the way that is personal to me and the story and the character. Sometimes it's singing. I have worked so hard on my singing voice, which was, I think, always kind of lacking. I always had an ability to read something and be honest with the material and, replicate it through rehearsals. That the acting part of it was always somewhat natural for me. I'm not doing Hamlet, but for commercial Broadway theater and musicals, it's always been pretty like, okay, I know how to take a side and read it. So when I
Yes.
was considered myself a dancer first, I was a dancer who was a great actor who could also sing fairly well.
Understood.
And now I'm working really hard at being a true triple threat performer, storyteller.
Mhm.
And I would love to be an actor first in terms of my skill set
Mhm.
in the next few years as I
Mhm.
transition from being a young adult to an adult.
Yes, yes, yes,
you know,
of course. Okay, so
yeah.
take us fast forward to when you started auditioning for stage work for the musical theater space and how that journey began and then how it went initially. And how old were you at that time?
I had stayed with my manager from childhood to teenage years into my early or my late teens, 14, 15. I was still auditioning and auditioning for professional musicals. But I was auditioning as a teenager at that point. So Bye Bye Birdie revival.
Oh yeah,
I was in for that. Pretty far actually. That was the first time that I was like, whoa, I'm getting callbacks now,
that's
which was kind
crazy.
of
Yeah.
where I started noticing like, oh, maybe I'm getting better because I'm
Hmm.
getting callbacks. And not only did I get a callback, I was in like two rounds of callbacks, almost to final callbacks, which was
Okay.
awesome. And I live with Bethany Tessark, who,
Oh, are you kidding? Okay.
yeah, yeah,
That's
who I know
wild.
is good friends with both your boys.
Yeah.
Um, she was in that, which is really hysterical that we might have been in auditions together.
Right, right.
So then that was like 14, 15. And then around 16, I knew that Paper Mill would cast 16-year-olds. And so they did On the Town, I think. I actually never saw it, but I believe they did On the Town probably around 2009 or 2010. And that was my first audition as an adult. And I went into the ECC, the Equity Chorus
Oh,
Call, not even
yeah.
through my manager.
Okay.
And that was the point where I started looking up auditions and I started doing the work. My
Hmm.
manager got me into things, but they were getting me into things as a teenager, as a
Hmm.
kid still. And I already was like, you know what? I think I want to do this even a step further. And I think
Yeah.
because I appeared older, I think when I was 16, I probably looked 20 and
Hmm.
was tall and,
Hmm.
broad and looked like
Hmm.
an adult male.
Yeah,
And
I think that's definitely something that the listeners can learn from, that even though you were repped, you still had to do your own footwork. You know what I mean? Like you still have to do some of that work and the networking and all the things that you need to do to get yourself into the right circles of people or into the right auditions. Like it's not just up to them because they're doing a ton of work for you, but then you have to also do this. So this is interesting. So you're
right,
16 and
I'm
you're
16.
seeking out your own
Yeah.
auditions. This is amazing. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
And
I love
it's especially if you're repped as a dancer first, like 9 times out of 10, you have to go wait at an equity chorus call or a non-equity. If you're non-equity, you're going to a chorus call, you're waiting in line in the non-equity line to see if they'll even see you. That's the kind of work that you have to put in.
it.
Not everyone can have an agent right off the bat. Not everyone who has an agent will get seen, even if you're right for it. They might only be taking 50 people to be seen for this one track. And you could go to an equity call and be one of 300 people, but at least you're getting seen by doing your own work. And
Mhm.
you also have to remember at these appointments that your reps are putting you in for, there's probably people who have done a few Broadway shows and have done
Yes.
in the same pool. So if they're picking 50 people, they might pick 15 people who have never done anything, who have representation, who's saying, no, you really need to see this person. They're perfect for the role. But then you've got 35 people who are getting in the room because they've done two Broadway shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's just the reality of the business side of it. So you do have to hustle on your own quite a bit. And that I found was the best learning experiences because I wasn't going in with any pressure. I was going in hoping to be seen. And then I went in and I auditioned, especially for this On the Town. I made it through the first combo, which was like a count of eight across the floor jazz combo. And I thought,
Okay.
okay, I've made it to the next round. And then they cut people and I went in and then it was a, 6 counts of eight ballet combo. And then I got cut. And I thought, okay, That was my first kind of step into dancing as
And
an
that was
adult.
smart of you to go in
Yeah,
there, like you said, with no pressure. There was nothing attached to it. You just wanted to go in
right.
and kind of get seen, and that's
Yeah.
was smart.
And I had no idea what it was like. I knew what having an agent or a manager submitting you for a commercial was like. You go, you sign in, you write your agent and their phone number, you go in, you slate, you read the sides, and you leave. That's what I knew. I didn't know, okay, you come in with a group of 30 other people, you learn it across the floor, they make a cut. Then you go, and then they bring the next 20 people in. You learn a big combo, they make a cut. The next 12 people do one more combo, and then 5 people sing, and then one of those people maybe gets the job. And now that I'm talking about it, I'm actually totally reliving being in Pearl Studios or being in Chelsea Studios. May Chelsea Studios also rest in peace while it existed.
Right.
Being in there and being so excited, like, how far did I get? The excitement then became less about performing and more about like trying to outdo myself each time,
Okay.
trying to say, okay, this time I'm going to try to make it to singing. This time I'm going to try to make
The
it to the second
challenge.
dance
The
combo.
challenge was there.
Yeah.
It sounds like you
Yeah.
were a gamer. Are you a gamer? Do you consider yourself a
I
gamer?
am I am a gamer. Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
love video games and I love board games and yeah,
You
it
want to
became
win.
like
You want to win.
how far can you get in this?
Hmm.
And my parents went through a little bit of a financial a period of a little bit of financial struggle. So the motivation to get a job was there, but I was some kids can work at Starbucks, that's awesome. Some kids can work at McDonald's, that's awesome. Whatever you have a passion for, or whatever's going to give you some money, that's fantastic. Do what you got to do.
Absolutely.
Help out mom and dad, help out yourself, earn your own money. That's great. But for me, I was like, I'm performing. That's what I'm going to do to make
That's
money.
so great.
I also worked bar mitzvahs at 17, 18 years old. I was like a
Like a hype
motivational dancer.
hype
Yeah.
dancer.
And that was that was like as far away from performing as I would let myself get, just because
Okay.
I was like, all I want to do ever. That's when I really also started just like falling totally in love with it, was 16, 17, 18.
Okay.
I was like, all I want to do 24 hours a day is be at a dance
Mm,
studio or
yeah.
be doing
Yeah.
plays.
So you became like laser focused at that point.
Yes. And it was
Mhm.
in my teenage years that I really like, it was something I had always enjoyed and at times loved, but in high school it was what I had to do. There
Mhm.
wasn't another option. It just
Mhm.
was, I loved it so much.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so that's why that's another reason why I started auditioning, was to help my parents out. They
Okay.
needed a little bit of help to pay for dance class, and
Mhm.
uh, I was like, okay, well then I'll see if I can get a job and see
Mhm.
if I can pay for my own tap shoes and
Right, right. So what
and
happened? So what show did you book at that? Did you end up booking Paper Mill?
I did. I booked Peter Pan at Paper Mill the end of my junior year of high school.
Wow.
And I would do 30 minutes of school every day because I lived in Jersey. So there's also
Okay.
like the benefit of growing up right outside the city,
Mhm.
as you
Mhm.
know as well.
Mhm.
Um, and so I would do 30 minutes of school from 8 to 8:30 and then get driven into the city to start rehearsals from 10 to 6. And then would go home. I don't know, it was just so wild. And I wish I remembered more of it. I think it was so much of a whirlwind to
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
working professionally and
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
17
definitely.
years old.
Yeah, well,
Um,
the hours that you're putting in, and it's something that you love, and now you're mixed in a community of people who share that love for performance, and so everything is just so heightened, I would
yeah,
think, in that moment. And then was school supportive? Can you kind of segue over into that for a moment?
sure. I went to a private school and it was a very kind of prestigious college prep school. And they were fine with helping me out by giving me some of the schoolwork that I missed. But they did say if I had planned, because at this point I was also auditioning quite a lot and getting to the end of things quite
Oh,
a lot.
good. Okay,
And
okay.
so I was like, I'm going to work. I'm leaving school. I'm going on tour.
Right, of
And
course.
I will also add in, I had auditioned for West Side Story like 30 times before I finally booked the first national tour right after high school. But there were 2 or 3 times when I thought I was between me and someone else, when I was like 16, 17, and then again when I was 17 that summer. So I was determined in that final callback this summer before my senior year of high school that I probably wasn't going back to school. And
Okay.
my best friend had done online schooling
Mhm.
her senior year. the year before I ended up doing it. And so I thought, you know what? We don't need to pay all this money for me to go for my senior year at a college prep school. It is very clear that I'm not going to go to be in
Yeah, you're
or a
not going to do
doctor.
academia. Yeah.
Yeah. And now actually in life, that's something I'm looking into as in addition to my performing life. But,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so school was kind of like, if you plan on doing this in the fall, maybe don't come back.
They did.
I,
Okay.
I I don't know how it would have been if I were in public school, because at public
Sure.
school there would have been a little bit more of a, they have to kind of work with me on this
Mhm,
because it's,
mhm.
I'm enrolled in the town school district. But
Right.
because it was more of a choice school that I was choosing to be there, they were kind of like, your grades slipped a lot. You don't really plan on going to college. You
Sure.
don't plan on being here maybe in September, October, because I also was in for final callbacks for Hairspray at Paper Mill that fall. And so they were like, take a think on that one if you really want to be here. And I was like, I don't actually want to be here. And that is also to say, like, I was a smart kid. I had pretty good grades. I was an AB student up until my junior year, and then all I wanted to do was dance. So I became an AB high C student.
Understood.
Not
Understood.
that I'm encouraging bad grades, but I think that because I was able to do the work as well and kind of, sometimes I wouldn't do my homework, but I'd always get 100 on a test.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't feel like, what, do I really have to get this done? Or is it more important to go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning
Absolutely.
to get up for school because I was at dance until 11 o'clock at night? So I would also say, this is maybe a good time to say to parents and to kids, like, if your kid is in high school and later on in high school and they might miss a homework assignment because they're pursuing their career and their passion, like, maybe let the one paper slip. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah, let it
maybe don't
slide.
push so hard. Pick your battles,
Yeah. Yeah.
and allow your child to let you know what they need. Because I definitely felt there were many moments in school where I had to write a 20-page paper and was like, this is going to probably be bad because I get to dance at 4 o'clock and then I leave at 10 and I
Mm-hmm.
have 3 hours of homework to do and I have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm exhausted physically because I've been dancing for 6 hours. So, like, I think the balance is important and schooling is obviously very important. But if you're at that point where you really want to be a pro in the performing arts career, it's like, let some of that slip through a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and push yourself to get it all done.
Yeah,
Let
don't
the
use it.
focus be that.
Yeah, don't use it as an excuse, but
Correct. Yeah.
keep the focus where it needs to be because there's no reason
Yeah.
to stay up till 3 in the morning writing a paper that's going to be, subpar
Yeah.
when you could go to sleep and be at your best the next day to get 100 on that test that they're giving in the other class.
Right.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure. For sure. So wait a minute. I'm going to back you up for 1 second. You auditioned 30 times or approximately it felt like
It was,
many for West
yeah.
Side?
I had counted it when I finally booked it, but it was something between 20 and 30. I had gone in for the international tour, which I think was my second audition ever after the On the Town Paper Mill. I was 16 and
Oh my gosh, you're
I
so
made it
young.
through. Yeah. And I would leave school and my mom would pick me up and take me in and, I'd go all day. It's crazy that she did that actually now in retrospect, but she knew that that's what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, she was being supportive. Mm-hmm.
and after the first couple, when it seemed like, okay, like he's learning a lot here, he's growing a lot. But yeah, so I auditioned for the international tour and I made it through the first 2 rounds. I got through the 1-8 across the floor again, and then, got cut after the first combo. And I was like, I am going back and I'm getting further. And the West Side auditions were always the same. It was always a count of 8 across the floor to Jet Song, and then it was cool, and then it was the ballet combination, and then you sang, and then you did then the final callbacks were a different day with other material. And so, yeah, I would go and I was like, if I can get to ballet this time, I'll be good. And then I made it through the ballet and got cut after ballet. And then I was like, okay, if I can make it to singing, and it was, again, the game of like, I would just go back and go back and go back. And so then when the revival happened, it had run for, I think, a year or a couple of years. And I was in for a swing track and to cover a couple of the guys. And that's the first time I had made it to the end for West Side.
Okay.
And I was like, whoa. And I think it's because they wanted younger people. I think in the original version of the revival, they wanted to go with like teenagers.
Oh, they did.
Not
Okay.
the most recent revival, the revival in 2009. Yeah. And so I was just in so much. And I was like, would stand at the ballet bar every day, like holding my passe. And I was like, you're not going to book West Side Story if you don't hold that passe a second longer, you know? And that was my motivation. That was the one thing that kept driving me was West Side
Okay.
Story.
Okay.
And then my junior into senior year of high school, I was in very final callbacks for the first national tour. And at that point, I had been in, again, 15, 16 times, something like that. And so I was like, please let me get it. And I didn't, which was good, I think. Because when I booked it a year later for the second year of the first national, I felt ready. I felt like, okay, this is, and that was when I was going to go to college, and I decided to go on tour instead.
Okay. So you were 18 then, going out on tour.
When I finally booked it, yeah.
That's persistence and initiative and all the things you need to just keep this career going forever, honestly. You know, to have that kind of like, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Congratulations that you did that.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
And it really was. It was a life-changing tour. And
was it?
Yeah. I mean, I believe very fully in like the universe and whatever it is for you, God, the universe, like, you know, being exactly where you should be at the right time and everything, your path always being your path. I was there at the right time. It was one of those universe moments. And I fell in love for the first time. I was on the road for the first time. I was doing the show I always wanted to do. And then I moved to the city right after that, almost a year later.
Wow. So did you feel taken care of during that tour? Because as a parent listening to your story, they're probably thinking 18 years old and now he's going to be let loose to go across the country with you know, like joining the circus. See ya.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, did I feel taken care of? Yes.
Yeah, by the cast and the crew and whatever.
By the cast and everyone. Yeah, of course. I think if you're going out on the road, you have a safe bubble that you're going out there with, especially if it's an equity tour. I know there's all sorts of different kinds of jobs for different people in unions, but an equity tour, everyone's taken care of for sure. We had our company managers who fly with us, who take us city to city and deal with us on a daily basis for whatever we need. You know, I was learning a lot, but you have no other choice. It was, you know, and I do think that I would have had a similar experience had I been living in New York City on my own in college. You know, I actually probably learned a lot more on the road, being in a safe space, being kind of funneled or shuffled to different cities to do my job. And to do a job, you can't be going out partying and going crazy. You know, there's a place for everything, but this is a hard business. You can't be going crazy all the time. You know, in college, there's obviously a sense of like, woo, we're away from home. And I think I probably would have done that more my freshman year of college than I did on the road, because I was with adults. I was with, you know, 20, 30, 40-year-olds who were, you know, on Sunday nights. And again, I was 18, so I don't condone underage drinking, but on Sunday nights at the end of a week in a city, we'd all go out and have a really fun time. And then you travel on Monday and you get into a new city and you're there to do your job, and you do your job all week. And sometimes you go grab dinner after the show, or there's cool events happening in the city. I got to see so much of the United States at 18 and getting paid to do it, which I think is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally is huge. Any of those. I have a client who recently booked the international tour of West Side Story as a swing. Who this is just recently, I think they're just in rehearsals, or they're getting ready to go to Germany to start rehearsals. And he's covering all the shark tracks and the jet tracks because of the type that he is, which is incredible and insane. And he's having to leave school because he was in college for a couple of years and he's leaving school. Same, just, you know, was going to take a bye year, but then we ended up sitting on you know, COVID land. So I obviously did some research ahead of having this conversation. So you did a lot of off-Broadway before booking the Broadway shows. So if we recap for a second, you had a manager who was sending you in for primarily commercial work. It sounds like some print, maybe a few other things, but not really the legit work, which is film, TV, stage. And then you on your own kind of found and opened that door to the stage opportunity. Now you have a huge credit, because going on a national tour is a huge credit. Now your name is highlighted and circled, you know, by casting, and they're saying, this is a guy we need to look at. This is
Totally.
one of those top 10 that are walking into that union audition. So what ended up happening? Did your manager end up sending you for these auditions, or did you continue to find the stage opportunities yourself? How did that work out?
A mix of both. And I will also just add on to all of that. I was getting a few big things too. Like occasionally a movie would come through,
Oh,
occasionally a
okay.
Broadway show would come through.
Okay.
So I wasn't doing entirely the Broadway stuff on my own, or the
Okay.
big stuff, on my own. But and I had a one time they did a reboot of a show called Skins, which was on TV in the UK, and they needed an out gay teen dancer who could tap dance. And I was like, I'm right here. And I actually made it through and didn't screen test or anything, but got to the very end and then decided to make it a female identifying cheerleader instead of a male
Oh,
tap dancer,
okay.
just to change it. And it was on MTV in the late 2010s or the early
Okay. I think I
2010s. So
remember this. I remember
yeah,
that.
and actually, I don't know if it did very well, but so I was still getting stuff from them. And
Mhm.
I then immediately booked another tour. I booked the Anything Goes tour, but I also was in for Bear off Broadway,
Oh, yeah.
which was a musical version of what was a pop opera in the early 2000s. And I booked both at the same time, and I got those auditions through my manager.
Okay.
But at that point, obviously, casting knows again. Then things started coming in a
Right.
lot more. And it
Right.
was primarily big stuff. It was like
And
regional theaters, off Broadway shows. But I do think it's a balance of them submitting me for things and also the effort that I did. By the time I was 18 and going in for, or about to leave on tour for West Side and had been in for other things, I was starting to really come into my own. And it was like, wait, who is this kid who's 6'2", who can sing fairly well and dance incredibly well and also act naturally? Who is this newcomer? And then I booked
exactly.
West Side and came back, and it was like, it did feel a little bit, and I understand the privilege and all of those things that I have in my package, but also I had put the work in. So it was
Yes.
luck and privilege combined with hard work and being ready at the right time.
Absolutely.
And that's what I
It's
think
like
a
the
career,
floodgates open for you,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And
a
it's
little bit.
funny. Yeah, it's funny because I had mentors years ago who said, one specifically who played in an orchestra, many orchestras actually
Mm.
on Broadway when he was young. He's older now and living out of the area, but he said to me, just wait, you get one of those doors ajar and you get your big toe in there and you wiggle your way in, and that inner circle of what this community is going to welcome you with open arms, and it's like the floodgates open and all the
Yeah.
opportunities are right in front of you. This is obviously, it sounds like that's what it felt like.
It did. And yeah, and I ended up staying in the city, which I think was a huge decision because I could either go on tour for another year with a great Broadway revival, or I could stay in the city and risk it for an off-Broadway revival. But it was a new version of a show.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did, and I stayed in the city, and it didn't stay open very long, and it closed in January, and I was like, oh my God, and then I was just living in the city, and I was doing life, real
Were
life.
you kind of like, now what?
The floodgates opened for auditions, but then it took a while to book something else. And I think that's just because I'm not quite sure why, other than just sometimes even if you're great and you're talented and you're ready to go, like sometimes the thing that's right for you just isn't
Well,
open.
yeah, if you don't match, yeah, exactly. Because if you're not the right
Yeah.
type for that
Yeah.
project, like the casting offices always talk about, oh, you have to be the right puzzle piece, which is so true because I've been on that side of things. And you could love 10 different guys, 10 different women, and want all of them to be in your show, but unless they fit that exact puzzle piece to
Yeah.
fit into that show, it's really difficult. So you sometimes have to wait. You just have to keep
Yeah.
auditioning or keep looking at and continue to train. Were you
And
training the whole
continue to
time?
train. So this is a good lesson, as I'll get into as we continue to progress through time, is that there was then a time between like 23 and 26, 27, where I lost my way a little bit. I didn't get the college experience. I felt like I had missed out on some things, honestly, to be completely transparent,
Mhm.
which is why I think having a balanced life that encourages learning and encourages training and encourages making lots of cool connections with people and creating artistically in different types of fields, and also having things that you love to do that aren't theater, are so important,
Mhm.
because the ups and downs of theater are difficult, and you get to a point maybe where I thought I don't need to take dance class. And I lost technique because that's how it works. Some of it's obviously still there. And I take 2 ballet classes and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm pulled up. I'm feeling great. But I'll tell you what, before I take those 2 classes, I don't feel that. I
Yeah.
feel a little sluggish. I feel a little heavier, you know?
Hmm.
And I did lose my way a little bit and wasn't working as much. I mean, I've had a very beautiful career and it's been awesome, but I could see the difference from, 18 to 22 when I was hustling and I was hungry and I wanted it and I was training and doing whatever it took, to then feeling comfortable and feeling like, whatever, it's fine, and lost some technique, wasn't on my A game, and things slowed down and I wasn't booking the shows that I wanted to book. I was getting shows and I was
Hmm.
working, but in the things that I was like not always entirely happy with, or that felt like, I missed out on the better stuff or the bigger stuff or the things where
Hmm.
I could have been covering a lead, but I wasn't quite prepared vocally and I hadn't been working as hard and the life kind of came in, so I think from a young age, I wish I had known to just expand my brain and my
Yes.
circle a little bit, to take in life, real life,
Yes.
and
Yes.
how now, as almost a 30-year-old, how that also has made me a much better artist. As an actor, you have to pull from all sorts of things, and even if you've never been in an experience, you have to find the closest thing to that, or whatever you can connect to kind of weave those thoughts into a character or a situation in a scene. And so by having more things in life, you have a bigger pool to do that from.
Yes.
And that is also to say that then you also just become a better human,
Yeah.
which is important first and foremost.
Yes, absolutely. That's really, really good advice. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's so true that you do have to do other things. Like I know with my clients over the years, I've always said, if your child has an opportunity to go to the birthday party where they're going to get to ride horses, go
Mm,
to the birthday party and let them ride horses. Like let them
yeah.
do these things so that, and of course, it's also wonderful to have on their special skills list at the bottom of their
Rides
resume.
horses.
But
Yeah.
it can be extrapolated to everything in life, like you're saying, because you want to have these artistic outlets, you want to have these networks where you can be expressive and do what you love, and when you're with these other people, that can open up other doors to other bigger projects or other projects that
Totally.
you may end up choreographing or directing or
Right.
being on that side of the fence. You
Yeah.
just never know, right? Which is
Yeah, totally.
crazy. Okay, so let me ask you this. Broadway debut. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to tell us about this and about how that happened and what it felt like to be on that Broadway stage. Was it something that was a goal that felt like it was far reaching, or did you know it was right there for you to take and it was just a matter of time?
I think I felt that I had to put the time in before I would book a Broadway show. I think I had assumed that I would continue to hustle and I would continue to make connections and I would continue to work hard and then I would book a Broadway show, which I think is almost goes back to saying like, no, and then you book a Broadway show and then you work harder, which is what I didn't do. But and I thought, that's it. I'm gonna eventually it'll come. I don't think I was on a timeline. I didn't think it was 10 years in the future. I didn't think it would be next month. I just was kind of taking it day by day, actually, which I think is a healthy way to look at it. Because if
Mhm,
you're
yeah.
waiting for the show, if you're like, where is it? Where
Yeah.
is it? It might hold you back a little bit instead of taking the opportunities. Because I stayed in the city. I waited 6 months. It was actually tying back into when I did my first off Broadway show. I was doing a regional gig. I was doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat up at
I love
Algonquin
that show.
Playhouse. I do too. I couldn't wait to do the show, and then I booked it that
I
summer.
think it's
Um,
underrated. I think the average person doesn't like, they
yeah,
don't think, oh, I'm going to go see that. I'm going to go see that one. I loved it.
yeah.
I love
I
it.
want them to do it for like the NBC does like an Easter show, the
Oh,
lives.
yes.
They did Jesus Christ Superstar, which I'm like, if you want to keep
Yes,
with
that
like
was
the Easter
amazing.
theme, they should do
Yeah,
Joseph.
they totally
I
should.
think it would be anyway. So I had such a joy. I had such a fun time doing that show. But I was called into rehearsal at 11 a.m. and I had an appointment. I actually had left my manager at that point because I just wanted to deal with an agent, and an agent
Mhm.
came and saw me in Bear and wanted to sign me. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to work with just an agent right now. I don't need a manager to manage a whole career. I'm just starting out. And I don't know if that was the right choice or not, but that's what I did.
Sure. Sure.
Because I think it's, for the viewers listening, it's totally individual whether you should have an agent who represents you as an individual agent, or a manager who manages your career and can talk to different agents and casting directors on your behalf. That's an individual choice. Anyway, so I had left my manager, was dealing with an agent, and my old manager called and said, hey, this actually came in for you. I don't know if they knew that you switched. And it was an appointment for Bullets Over Broadway. And it was like 2 days from when I got the email. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll send it to my agent. Thank you so much for letting me know. And so it was at 9 a.m. and I got called into rehearsal at 11. So I went in and I danced, and Susan Stroman wasn't supposed to even come in until 11:30. And she ended up, yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing. She ended up coming in around 10:30 that morning. And so I was able to dance for her earlier than expected. And they let me go. They're like, go back to rehearsal. And as I was changing, they were like, Casey, actually, can you put your tap shoes on? Stro wants to see you do a couple things. And so she worked with me and had me do a few things. And then I left. And then they said, hey, can you come sing on your lunch break? And so I didn't eat. I just ran out on my lunch break. I went and sang. I drank a Jamba Juice and came back to rehearsal. And then they said, can you come back and read and sing on your lunch break the next day? And at the end of the day, they called me and they told me. And I was like, I can't believe in a span of 48 hours, I just booked a Broadway show.
And they told you?
My agent called me at the end of the day the next day. So it was like, I went in, I danced, sang on lunch. The next day, I sang on lunch again. And then at the end of that day, they had told my agents I booked it. And I guess that's why, it worked out, is because casting, I think, knew that I was right for the track. Mm-hmm. And then Stro saw me dance and really was like, he's great. Mm-hmm. And it was right place, right time, meets hard work, meets, and a show that I was very right for. I had to play, an Italian gangster, in the 1920s, who could also do chaîne jetés and tap dance and all that stuff. And that was my Broadway debut. And I did a workshop of the show that fall. And then we started rehearsals for Broadway in January of 2014.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that was, and I was 20, I had turned 21 that December. And that was it. And that was my Broadway debut.
That's an incredible story. How unreal. 48 hours you find. That's nuts.
It's crazy.
But here,
and because sorry,
I just want to mention something, because I think this is a learning moment, and because you were in rehearsal, and look what you went through and what you chose to do to be sure that you were seen. And this is so important that people hear this, because I think there's young adults out there, many of them that I work with, in various stages of this, who don't look at it that way. They might say, well, that's my lunch. That's not how this industry works.
Yeah. I wonder now if I would do the same thing, because I feel like, oh, do I have to do that on my lunch break? But honestly, I think that's ingrained in me. And I think
don't you think so?
I would roll my eyes a little bit, but sometimes you need to roll your eyes to get what you want. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like sometimes it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do that on my lunch break. And that's okay to feel that.
Yes.
But then you got to still do it.
You got to still do it. Exactly. I think the layman has these unwritten rules that are kind of in their head, that they think life has to be when you're working or whatever it is that you're doing. And you have to think outside of the box in this industry, and the fact that you just were like, yes, I'll come. Yes, I'll just get this Jamba Juice and go back to another 4 to 6 hours of rehearsal and live in that space with a smile on your face, being happy and nice about it. And that's what got you there, because if you hadn't done that, Broadway debut would have been later in life, Okay, so Broadway debut.
Yeah.
And now we can fast forward to how many shows later? Like, I'm looking at this list. 6? Am I right?
So Some Like It Hot will be number 6, which is crazy.
Okay, so before we talk about Some Like It Hot, and I want to ask another question about the series of shows. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I almost feel like you could come back again and talk about each one of these.
Sure.
Because it's insane. Okay, so I'm just going to read through them. So Disaster, Miss Saigon, that had to be an incredible experience.
Yeah. And it was the first time I had done something so different. I wasn't just dancing, that's an operatic.
Intense, dramatic, and then
beautiful show. King Kong, that was an interesting type of show to do. But I think because it was such an athletic show, and it was a community, the 12 of us were on the puppet and dancing and playing roles. So it was a lot of skill sets there.
Best shape of your life.
Correct. I
So,
was
so
actually into
big
that shit when I
puppets.
was.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Cirque du Soleil. I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the puppets and how they build those and all of that and how that works. And it is intense. That you must have learned a lot. That
Oh
was
my God. I learned how to take care of myself, I think is the in a show 8 times a week that is so difficult. You have to treat yourself, treat your body with kindness outside the show and work on things outside the show just as much as you are working. That's probably the biggest thing I learned. And then teamwork. There's 12 people that it takes to operate this giant gorilla puppet. You have to work together. You have to have communication. You have to be able to like we did exercises in the audition actually and in rehearsal where you really just are like seeing the periphery of people
Mhm,
around you
mhm.
and being able to feel their energy and move with them as one, and that was really it was a really cool opportunity. I learned a
Yeah,
lot for
yeah.
sure.
We have to talk about Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
And of course it was interrupted by sadness and COVID and all the things. But what I want to talk about is you went on for one of the bigger roles. Can you talk about that experience and how that
Sure.
happened and all that?
Yeah, well, it was my first time understudying a principal role on Broadway and of that type of show. On West Side, I understudied Riff, but that was, a dance role, and that was totally something I could do at 18. But to be understudying, a role on Broadway for the first time was nerve-wracking. Luckily, it was the perfect introduction. He had a few scenes and a great song in Act Two, and was, a character, but wasn't leading the show, wasn't, it was a little bit of lighter. The pressure was a little bit lighter. It
Okay.
felt like this is a great, great first role. I had to,
Introduction to
be
being
British. I had to be, have a song in Act Two that was entirely my own to belt out at the end.
wow.
It was a great introduction, and I was still nervous as hell on day one. The first time I did it, I was
Uh,
shaking.
did you have enough notification before you went on, or was it a thing where you found out the same day? Like what happened
I
there?
did actually. He had let me know. I think that he was negotiating a personal day for a wedding. One of his best friends was getting married, and so it was in previews when we reopened this time last year. And he had let me know like, hey, we're negotiating this day. I don't know if I'm going to get it or not, but I'm going to call out if I don't get it because
Mhm.
I have to be. That's one of those things where life has to also be important. Your best friend's wedding,
Yes.
you don't do the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, and that's just life. That's important. And so he let me know that probably 3 weeks beforehand. So I had a
Oh,
lot of time to
oh,
prep,
that's
and
nice.
I had to kind of do a lot of it under the radar until then. He ended up getting the personal day. They arranged through it, so it was done the correct way for
Oh,
sure.
nice.
And so and then stage management, gave me not a whole lot of rehearsal. It was kind of, you can get up on stage during this part of tech and kind of play on the set a little bit, but it wasn't crazy, which
Mhm,
was good. I felt, I had a lot of preparation. I had worked on the song with my voice teacher. I was feeling ready to go, which is
mhm,
good.
mhm,
um
mhm.
and it
Yeah,
was a lovely process, opened and closed 3 times.
right,
But
right.
I was grateful to have a job coming back to after the pandemic,
Yeah.
that was in theater. I transitioned into the fitness world over the pandemic.
Okay, okay.
Again, going back to having other things that you like to do because sometimes you won't work for a while and it's nice to have a job that you enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, that side hustle, that other piece of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it opened a third time.
So we opened 2020 unofficially. We're in previews. Opened for real in December of 2021.
Mm.
Opened again in May of 2022. And then we were closed and we were like, this is it.
Yeah, it's just, well, it must have been nice though to go back into the setting with all of the cast and all the people and be back up on stage again though.
Yeah, it was. And it was a, very sweet show, and the people were obviously all lovely. And so, it was a feel good show, which was nice coming into
Mm.
after the pandemic.
Yeah, after the
And
pandemic. Hmm.
I think I really like cried hard on the final closing night. And as much as I missed the show itself, but I was crying because it was the end of this huge chapter of COVID and
Yes.
the openings and closings of it all. And it just is,
Yes.
it's so much. I mean,
Too emotional. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And even with Some Like It Hot being the show I'm doing now, and we COVID test and that we might run into that, down the line, it
Mhm.
feels different because it's not, so back and forth over years of pandemic. I think
Right.
we're at a very different place now,
Right.
but I'm hoping
Yeah.
that Some Like It Hot is a big old hit.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. I think it's going to be. I mean, Casey Nicholaw is directing and choreographing, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
personal favorite of
fantastic.
mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love him, and I'm super excited for the show. I can't wait to see it. So when does it open?
We start previews November 1st, next Tuesday.
Oh,
I
it's
don't know when
that.
this is going to air, but yeah, we had a full week of tech. Now we have our second full week of tech, and then we have our invited dress next Monday, and then first preview on Tuesday,
Wait, so next Monday, what's the date?
the 31st.
So it'll air that Sunday.
So I will have had a week of previews.
Yes, I have to
It will
come see
probably
it.
it'll be a different show probably by the time
But
this comes out.
the end of the first week.
With how
Oh my
previews
God.
work.
Okay, I have to
Yeah.
ask you this. Gypsy robe, are you
I don't
getting
think
close?
it'll be me. I don't, we have some serious veterans in our cast. People
Oh,
who have
do
done like
you?
14 Broadway shows. Yeah.
Oh,
I think I'm getting close to being at a point where I would get it. Sometimes it depends on the show. I know people who have gotten it with 3 Broadway shows.
oh, okay,
But
okay.
yeah,
Explain a little bit what that is, because not all the
sure.
listeners are gonna know.
Yeah, so now they call it the Legacy Robe, and it used to be called the Gypsy Robe, which was in either the late 1940s or early 1950s.
Okay.
Ethel Merman lent her robe to a chorus dancer in another show. I've heard this so many times and probably should be able to retell it perfectly.
Oh, you're
but I'm
fine.
not.
You're fine.
And so basically, from that moment, they started a tradition where the ensemble member who has had the most chorus contracts on a Broadway show, in Broadway shows, gets this robe, and it gets passed on through the season of Broadway shows. And now they patchwork. It's like a big patchwork quilt, and they patchwork, the posters of the shows that are in that season that go on it. And so if you're in a Broadway show and you've had multiple chorus contracts, ensemble contracts, it's for the hardworking ensemble performers out there. You get this robe and you go around the stage 3 times, touching everyone's hands, and then you have to go into everyone's dressing room in every corner of the theater, and then the show is blessed. And it's this beautiful opening night ritual, and every time that it happens, it makes me tear up, because it's seeing someone who has put the time in, who has had usually a beautiful, bountiful career, and they get to be celebrated as having the most contracts on a show.
Yeah.
And one day I will certainly get it. I hope that I get it before I really start the transition into principal world, because you don't get it if you're on a principal contract.
Right.
You get plenty of other things on the principal contract.
Right, it's true. This is true. No, I just wanted people to understand what that was. I think that's kind of a hidden kind of thing that goes on, behind the scenes and backstage. Well, listen, this has been awesome talking to you. You have no idea. You shed so much light on the process and on all of the things that people need to be able to be successful, and you certainly have been extremely successful, and I wish you all good things moving forward into principal roles. Is there anything else you'd like to mention to anyone, to the listeners?
Be kind, be a hard worker in the room, be open-minded, especially in the room, say yes to things. That's it. Be a good person. Be a joy. Be the person who they're like, oh, they're such a joy to be with in the room, because you'll always work no matter what.
Yes, that is the top priority. I agree with you completely.
You're playing pretend, and you're getting paid to play pretend. So find that inner child and just have fun, and don't take life too seriously.
I love that. Thank you, Casey, so much.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was great to chat with you.
You too. Have a great day.
All right. See you later.
Bye. If you'd like to follow Casey to keep up with all that he is doing, follow him on Instagram at Casey Garvin. And join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you need more information, go to lbctalent.com and follow me on socials at Leesa Csolak _LBC Talent. By sharing our stories, we can help other talented individuals land the career of their dreams.